Good morning and welcome to the DFS YouTube channel. I am Razzle11 and you can find me on X at Razzle11Grinds. We are going to take a look at some pitching for today, the 24th of September. It is a football Sunday, so prize pools are depleted a bit, which is very frustrating. One main weather game to worry about here is Arizona and New York. They were rained out on Saturday. Weather is not great today either. So certainly a chance that there could be a rain out there as well, which I believe would force them into a double header on Monday. But I'm not sure how motivated they are to force this game in, so it'll be interesting to see what goes on. Another one here, I guess, is the New York Philadelphia game. The start time got pushed back to 5:05 Central, but from what I'm reading is that's pushing it closer to some more severe weather. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with that one either. So it will be interesting to see. And with that one being such a late start time, it is kind of a pretty big gamble to rely on anybody in that game, to be honest, because there just are no swaps at that point. So, but we will dig in here to the pitching options. At the top, we get, man, I don't know. Like, I'm seeing different places list Kyle Wright as game one starter with Strider going game two in that doubleheader. Right now we have DK listing Strider for this one. It's going to be really important to figure out who the starter is for game number one. To be honest, if it's Strider, then we just fire up Strider. Really, no questions asked. If it's Kyle Wright, I just don't think we play Kyle Wright. He's made two starts since his return after being out for 4 months. Has not looked good in either of them against Philadelphia. I know Washington isn't as dangerous of a squad, but I'm going to have no interest in Wright if he starts game one, but all sorts of interest here in Spencer Strider. Faced Washington once, shut them down across 6 innings of work. After Strider, we get Freddie Peralta. Against the Marlins, Peralta obviously hasn't been as strong on the road. Minus 130 favorite. Game total of just 7 in this one. Did dominate against the Marlins. Just absolutely dominated them recently. We're looking at about 2 weeks ago where he shut them down. Does allow home runs or a home run in a majority of starts. Big K upside. Plenty to love. I just wish he wasn't on the road, but just an elite spot for him. Even with the Brewers having clinched a playoff spot, I think they still need to clinch the division, so today could be that day. Zach Gallen in that Arizona-New York game hasn't been sharp recently. Super volatile, but ton of upside. We saw what he did against the Cubs recently. The weather is a huge concern, so I'm most likely going to be off of him. Just because I feel like if I'm going to spend up, I might as well go with Peralta and Strider. But Gallen is a very interesting piece to get a little different with. But we are going to need to hear about the weather updates and hopefully get some clearing. Joe Ryan, there is some potential weather in Minnesota, but from what I've read, it's mostly going to stay away. Ryan has been at his best at home. He was strong against the Angels. One of the big things about the Angels is that in September, I believe it was, they've been striking out roughly 35% of the time. At least that was coming into the other day. So The Angels lineups have just been striking out a ton. That provides us a ton of upside with Joe Ryan. I am very interested, even though he hasn't been the greatest in the second half. He had a decent stretch here, but there wasn't a lot of fantasy points to go within that stretch. Um, but I do think there's plenty of upside here. And he makes another reason why it might be easiest to just fade Gallon and not have to worry about that weather. Evaldi, I'm going to pass. He did shut down Seattle earlier this season. He just hasn't been the same guy in the second half. Um, Trying to get up to speed, just no strikeouts going on. He's just not the same guy that was an all star at this point. Hunter Brown, a minus 260 favorite against Kansas City. I'm definitely interested. He has not been great at home. There is a worry there. He's coming off getting lit up by Baltimore, but he shut down Oakland prior to that. He's been very up and down. Um, I'm willing to use him, probably a 15 to 20% type play in my MME pool, but he's certainly viable. Tristan McKenzie making his return from the IL. He's going to be about a 5 inning guy, 80 pitches, but it is a difficult spot. Um, McKenzie's a guy that I had big hopes for coming into the season, started the year out on the IL, made 2 starts and went back on the IL. Uh, it's just a tough spot against Baltimore. He is a minus 110 favorite. Game total of just 8. So I'm intrigued a little bit here. I know what kind of upside he can provide us. In his debut of the season debut, he did strike out 10 in just 5 innings, 79 pitches. So, like, we're looking at this kind of a start as being possible, then I have to be interested. Obviously, Baltimore, a little more difficult spot than Minnesota was. But this just shows us what kind of output we can get even in a 5 inning or 80 pitch performance out of McKenzie. Uh, so I just have to get some exposure to him just because I'll kick myself if I don't and he goes out there and does 25 to 30 fantasy points in those 5 innings. Kikuchi taking on the Rays. Uh, he is an underdog in this one. Tampa Bay is a minus 120 favorite. Game total of just 8. He's been pretty solid against the Rays this year. Some runs, but 14 strikeouts in 11 innings is solid. He's kind of been in an every other scenario recently. Um, I don't have a real strong lean with Kikuchi. I can go either way. Most likely, he probably makes my pool, but he's probably just still going to end up as a 15 to 20% type play. He's probably a little more reliable than Hunter Brown is, but I think Brown has just more upside in his matchup. So it's kind of a give and take. Edward Cabrera against the Brewers dealt with some walk issues against the Brewers, looked dominant outside of those walks, has been ridiculous at home. It's a great spot, low total game. I'm going to be interested in Edward Cabrera, even though the Brewers offense has woken up a little bit the last few days, but Cabrera for sure, plenty of upside for me. Christopher Sanchez in that New York Philadelphia game that I was talking about earlier. I'm going to probably just have to fade him based on weather. He's somebody that I've used a bit this year. Wasn't great against the Mets earlier and hasn't been great at home. Uh, Kind of making it easier to fade him and avoid dealing with potential weather as the last game on the slate. Taj Bradley favored against Toronto. Definitely interested. He did struggle against them earlier. The strikeouts were there, and that's important because that's what we're looking for. Just pure upside with some strikeouts. Um, this LA game, I thought he was on his way to a massive K performance. I feel like he struck out 5 in the first. two and a third or something. Kind of slowed down a little bit. I wish he would have been given the sixth inning. Uh, but there's plenty of upside with Todd Bradley, but he is a dangerous one. Certainly going to be in my pool just based on the upside alone. Woo against Texas, I'm probably going to have to pass. His major league debut came against Texas, and they knocked him around a bit. He hasn't been as strong on the road. He's been great the last two starts, but I'm afraid of left-handed hitters against him, and Texas has a couple that can do a ton of damage. I don't know. This is one I'll have to think about more, but right now I'm leaning towards the fade. Um, Texas is a minus 130 favorite. Game total of 9 right now. I just don't like this spot for Wu that much, but if I do need to force in an eighth guy, maybe it'll be Wu because he does have upside. Clevenger going into Boston, coming off a pretty strong, dominant start. The complete game, he did allow a home run, I believe, in the ninth inning. Uh, 109 pitches, big jump. I don't really like to get on guys after they've had a huge increase in pitch number. Uh, so there's some worry there. Being in Boston, obviously some more worry because, you know, runs happen in Fenway quite a bit. Game total of 9. Boston's a minus 160 favorite. But Clevenger's looked pretty good the last handful of starts. Um, I think he's going to end up on the outside looking in, uh, but it's tough based on recent performances to just eliminate him. Kyle Gibson against Cleveland has been better on the road, but I feel like we can fade Gibson and just, if he has a solid game, not worry about it because like we should be able to match that elsewhere. Um, I just don't think he gets 25 plus enough in this scenario to make him needed in our build. So it's a good chance he ends up outside of my player pool. We're on the other side of that potential rain game. Talked about him on yesterday's video. The strikeouts are there now, so I'm intrigued. But with the rain, I think we might have to avoid or at least get a better idea of what's to be expected weather-wise as we get closer to the first pitch. So he's somebody I'm definitely going to monitor to get an idea because I would like some exposure to him if that game is expected to play clean. Jordan Wicks hasn't been a huge K guy at home yet. Uh, this will be his second start against Colorado. It was solid in Coors. Uh, I'm very interested. Colorado is just an offense we've been picking on with pitching. He's a talented young guy. 9 Ks came in his debut. He's only had 11 Ks in his 4 starts since then, so uh, maybe we don't expect a ton of Ks, but I do like it. I believe the wind is slightly blowing in Wrigley. He's a minus 267 favorite. I'm for it for sure. Brandon Williamson, I'm probably going to pass. He was solid against Pittsburgh previously. Uh, he's not throwing the ball overly well right now, so I'm probably just going to pass on Williamson. The game total of 11 in that game is ridiculous. Um, Cutter Crawford against the White Sox. I do have some interest here. Struggled against the White Sox the first time he faced them. Has struggled at home, so that's what might ultimately lead him to not being part of my pool. But he's looked solid the last 2 times out. He just flashes some ability, and at 6,700, I love the idea of getting an upside game from him at that price. So I think he's going to make my pool just because he's somebody that I tend to play a lot, but he's going to be borderline. And that's going to be it, really. You know, Buto and the weather. No real interest in anybody down here. Maybe Berea if I find out that he's going to go 5 innings, but just because there's a ton of K upside in that matchup. So there we have it. If you enjoy what it brings you, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, get to the alert anytime we drop videos here at DFS Army. If you want to join us, get access to our coaches, tools, sheets, Discord, etc., I'll put links in the description below. You can use promo code RAZ, it's RAZ, for 10% off. And as always, best of luck, everybody.